You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry.
Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I had the opportunity to interview a friend and someone that I admire in the beverage industry, Erick Castro. Erick is a true character that has led the most colorful life. He recounts his time in beverage, creating his podcast, Bartender at Large, his favorite episodes. We even dive into mental health issues in our industry and just so much more. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite cocktail, and enjoy this very special episode. Erick, welcome to Served Up. I am really excited to have you on the show today.
Oh man, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
100%. Can you tell our listeners about your background and your journey and what really brought you into the beverage industry?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? Okay. I guess a good place to start was, I was washing dishes in a restaurant when I was about 14 years old. And I was, freshman in high school. And that's when I really was like, okay, cool. Like I like the vitality of being, working in a restaurant environment, restaurant bar, ended up bussing tables eventually. And, I would say fast forward, I'm like in my 20s going to college, and I was bartending at a chain restaurant at the time. And I was with the group for maybe about 7 years. It's like, it's called BJ's Brewery. It's based out of Southern California, but now they're all over the country. And it's I guess it's kind of similar to like a Chili's Fridays type of vibe, except maybe a little
kind of a thing.
Yeah, but maybe a little bit nicer, because they made their own beer. So it was one of those vibes. And I worked with them for 7 years as it went from 16 locations, like 120, 130. So I saw the company grow and, saw this opportunity created. So I started to become a restaurant trainer. I would go to like new locations and help them open them. And I had a lot of fun with doing that. It's crazy work, crazy hours, but it was such a good time. And so I got really good at like corporate infrastructure, and I was bartending there. We weren't using fresh ingredients back then. It was just like sour mix and, like whatever, blue curacao, ingredients you could find, it's an island blue pucker and all that sort of thing. Right. But I was having a good time doing it. I got really fast and I got really efficient. So fast forward a few years, now I'm working in craft cocktails. I have a Tommy's margarita for the first time. And it just blows my mind. So then I ended up, I guess this was at a tequila bar when I had my first, Tommy's margarita. I was bartending there. I thought I knew everything. And I started working there and was just like, wait, what? Like, I've been making a margarita wrong for 7 years. Like, what other drinks have I been making wrong? So I just took a really deep dive into craft cocktails then. And so essentially what I did with my first, I guess, real national program that I did was a place called Rick House in San Francisco. And that was kind of a union of all the infrastructure that I had learned in efficiency from working in chain restaurants to with craft, to tying that together with craft cocktails. And that bar ended up winning tons of awards and getting nominated for all kinds of stuff and, getting all this acclaim and recognition. And I feel like, honestly, so much of that was because all I was doing was tying together two worlds that people thought were, completely separate from one another, but I felt like could benefit each other if they were united under one program. So I guess that's really it in a nutshell. I tried to speed my way through it.
I would like to go back just a little bit because you said that you did go to college. Where did you go to college? Yeah. What did you study?
Oh, I graduated from San Diego State School of Journalism with a minor in poli-sci. My goal was essentially I wanted to run political campaigns.
You're kidding.
Yeah, that was my goal. I wanted to work. I used to be the San Diego, or no, I was like the Southern California regional director for Rock the Vote while I was in college.
Oh my gosh, Rock the Vote, MTV.
Yeah, they still have, I mean, still a group and they still get people registered to vote. It was cool. I would just pretty much go to concerts and then get people to vote or register to vote.
Wow. So what did your folks think? Like, what did the family think when you transitioned from politics to bartending?
My family, they were, my family wasn't big in education necessarily. They were just like, they were more emphasized hard work. So they respected everything we did, or I did. And they were fine with pretty much, I think, any role I went to, as long as I applied myself.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents were immigrants. They came over from Mexico. So they worked in fields. They were field workers. And my mom even worked in the fields too, as she was a kid. And I remember my grandfather had told her specifically, like, I brought you out here to work in these fields, over the summer so that you can see how much it sucks, so that you can do something better with your career.
Amazing.
Than, picking fruit. And there was something my mom really took it to heart. So my mom was very much, pushed that in us. Like, no one in my family had really gone to college before that. So, well, I guess my older brother, my older sister. So we were, it's kind of a new thing for us. But my parents were very much of the mindset that as long as you're working hard and you're trying to like be your best, then that's really all we care about. And I think I took a lot of that to heart in regards to cocktails. Because, back then, I mean, you remember this, back then we used to get made fun of for making craft cocktails. Craft cocktails were nowhere near mainstream yet.
Right.
So people would tease us about it. I would make a cocktail, with, something super simple, like mint and lemon or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd have like the chef, the head chef would come out and make fun of me like, oh, I'm sorry, nobody wants to drink a cocktail with a lemon in it. They're so sour. What is it? Are you crazy? And then like the lead server or whatever make fun of you, like, oh, careful, don't leave something out. Eric's gonna make a cocktail out of it. I remember that. That's what people were like back then.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we would get made fun of, or like or sometimes a lot of times like the chef would try to sabotage any progress we were making because they were afraid, I guess, somebody else would get attention besides them. I don't know. I remember being I would even say downright hostile towards craft bartenders back then. And then it was only really, I think, this was, like I would probably got into craft cocktails maybe around 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already been bartending before that. So, from making, whatever, just, random Long Islands and stuff with sour mix and stuff before that. But I remember when I first got into it, it was pretty hostile towards us.
Yeah. Well, it was something new, right? Like you said something so key about the chef being like a little bit snarky, like, oh, what do you think you're doing out here? Like to not be upstage. This is so before the time where chefs and the beverage team really came together with that aha moment. Like, okay, if we work together, we can make more money and we can also make a better experience for our guests. Like, duh.
It seems like common sense now. But at the time, it was very much, I think it was like, but people were also worried about battling for resources and even guests sometimes. I remember you would bring them in. They would be like, whoa, what are you going to do with that? Like, no, I don't want to drink a lime. You're like, no, trust me, like it's going to be really good. You're not drinking just lime. It's going to balance it out. And then I remember, but you let them taste it like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Absolutely.
And, people were already like pushing towards like fresher foods and fresher ingredients anyway. So I think it was just a very easy transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it fun though to have been part of the whole movement of the cocktail, like just kind of bringing it back to the basics with fresh ingredients, really paying attention to Mother Nature, using what's in season, right? And doing things with quality versus quantity, because I feel like we've always been drinking in quantity, Yeah. So when things came around first, like full circle, I think it was just such an exciting and special time.
Oh, it was such a great period for beverage period, because this was the same time that, like the craft beer movement was really getting a lot of steam and really starting to go nationwide, and coffee was getting better. And I felt like a lot of what people were gravitating towards back then was like, they were drinking bolder beers, bolder coffees. All of a sudden we had a generation that was no longer afraid of flavor.
Right. Yeah. Because I know, like growing up, so my mother is very Italian, and so in our pantry, there was like 3 things though. Seriously, like spices: There was always like some sort of minced garlic, garlic salt, like all the garlics, right? Salt and pepper. Period. Amen. Nothing else.
Yes.
And so I didn't grow up. And my dad's Polish and Irish, so everything's bland and boring, right? With that cuisine, with at least what he was cooking was definitely not tasty so much. So it's just amazing to see like how our palates have evolved from childhood, you know, at least this generation to where we are today. I think it's incredibly cool.
Yeah, it's just such a interesting and beautiful evolution, because I do think for a long time, you know, that there was a generation that was more likely to have eaten watermelon Jolly Ranchers than actual watermelon. You know, they were eating more, I guess, like grape flavored candy than actual grapes. We were a generation that was so far removed from the natural ingredients that inspired these flavors that I think a lot of people actually forgot what things were supposed to taste like. And then once they developed a palate for that, they were like, oh my God, this is beautiful. What have we been missing out on? Like, so I guess this is what a beer is supposed to taste like. It's not supposed to taste watered down. You know, wow, a good cup of coffee, you know, a real, you know, cappuccino well made instead of, you know, like a little frosted milkshake that you get at a chain coffee shop.
Right.
And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I also feel like it's really interesting that where we are now, you know, on my latest product and what I've been stressing to everybody is like right now, if you're under 30, you became of drinking age. You turned 21 when the craft cocktail was already mainstream. So
How spoiled the generation is. Oh my God. I was brought up during the crap of the cocktail, not the craft.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it though. But for real, we had a generation like this generation. I mean, you can drink an Aperol Spritz at Disneyland. You can have a Sazerac at the movie theater. So to them, these cocktails are so approachable and mainstream that it was never something that they had to be convinced into trying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you remember what it was like bartending, even, you know, I would even say probably even 2009. You had to to get someone to try something that wasn't vodka was so tricky. You would be like, oh, here, try this. I'm like, oh, what is that? Tequila? No, I'm not drinking that. Like, come on, like, here, give it a try. Like, nope. They weren't as open-minded about it as they are today.
Right. I mean, I was bartending at a time when, you know, if you didn't drink gin, for instance, you weren't going to try it because of the stigma around it that, you know, it makes you crazy. You only drink it on a full moon. I could go on and on. This was the very early 90s, you know, oh my God. And then when the whole craze came with like the vodka and Red Bull and you know, with freaking energy drinks. I was working at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and Tony Abaghanam, who was our beverage director / mixologist, you know, said, absolutely not. We're not going to have, you know, energy drinks. We're not making like fluorescent green apple martinis. But guess what? That's all anybody wanted to drink. And, you know, here we are trying to make an apple martini with like fresh apple juice. And oh my God, what a time for customers to come in and learn.
I know, right? But it is now we're in this really cool era where I'm telling you, it's like, you know, you'll have like 21-year-old kids are coming to the bar and ordering Bouquets. You know, I say kids are not kids, they're full grown adults, of course. But in my mind, I'm still kind of like, wait, how do you even know these drinks?
Oh, right.
You know, and it's just such a cool thing. And now, in a way, I would even say that they don't see like anything really distinct from a lot of these classic cocktails, and then the ones from the 80s and 90s when they're made well. So, like, you know, someone will come in, like, you know, I'll have bartenders visiting me at the bar, and they'll be sitting at the bar, and someone will come in behind and be like, "Oh yeah, man, could I get I'll do a Manhattan with rye, a Sazerac, 2 Modelo's, and you know, 4 green tea shots."
How far we've come.
Yeah, so
in like 4 green tea shots versus 4 redheaded sluts, because that's what I was serving back in the day. Like, not even kidding, just not deliciousness.
Yeah, and it's so cool because to them, like, and then, you know, our green tea shots, we make them, you know, with fresh juice and, you know, like a really nice peach liqueur, and so they come out really delicious. But so to them, that bartender just kind of like, yeah, of course I got to say Sazerac and a green tea shot. They don't see these as being disparate things, where I feel like back in the early days of the craft cocktail community, in the scene that we were fostering them it was very much like, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. We don't do these, a lot of places were like, yeah, like you're saying, we're not going to carry Red Bull. We're not going to do vodka Red Bulls. We're only making serious cocktails. But now where we're at is people are like, well, I can have both sometimes in the same place. And like if we're all just here to have fun. And I think it's because we had to be like that back then, because we had to draw a line in the sand on what we did and what we didn't do.
I do think we've become more like unpretentious. I do think that there was a time that we were pretty pretentious with the cocktails, just like chefs get as well. Like, no, you can't ask for ketchup,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I feel like now we're all kind of over it, but I feel like it had to happen though. We needed that.
Yeah.
There had to be that area, that line of demarcation, I guess, rather to show that what we did and what we didn't do. Right. And now we're at the point where I'm telling you, I said a lot of these younger people, I don't even think they even see the difference. They don't even understand. They're like, oh yeah, I ordered a raspberry kamikaze that was like, fresh muddled raspberries and fresh lime with, a nice dry curacao. And it's a delicious drink when it's made well, right? So they don't see it as like, they might have never even had like the gross version of it.
They never had roses of lime.
Yeah, no. They only know like the high-end stuff. And I think that's really fascinating, really cool.
I think that there needs to be a book like about roses of lime, bar foam, not the kind of fancy bar foam that we make in the can, right? But like actual powdered bar foam or frothy, There's just a lot to talk about those ingredients that you just don't see anymore for reasons, right? In the craft cocktail bars, and how at one point we thought that they were delicious, and then how our palates have really changed over to that freshness.
Drastically changed.
And so, beyond the cocktail, what other changes have you seen in your career in the industry? Like, let's talk about bar teams.
Yes. There's a lot of interesting dynamics I haven't seen in bar teams. I guess I'm trying to think which areas to dive into. It seems like there's so many different measures. I guess one thing I would say that's really cool in terms of, I guess not necessarily particularly bar teams, but rather opportunities for bar teams, is I'm very happy to see so many opportunities and directions for today's bartender. Like, if you were bartending in the 90s or early 2000s, the only real, I guess, career path you could take that was like, directly related to what you were doing was like, you could own your own bar, or you could end up working for, a distributor. There weren't that many other opportunities besides that. But now what you could do is like, that's one thing I talked to my bar team about. I tell them, I'm like, hey, look, if you can give me a year here at least, there'll be a million opportunities for you to go from here. You could go into brand education, doing, you could become a consultant. You work for a hotel group. You could be a brand ambassador. You could work for a portfolio, and you can go into marketing. There's so many different avenues and career potential. Shoot, you could become a YouTuber, right? Or have a podcast. There's so many different areas you could go into now based off of, the fact that the craft cocktail now has a greater mind share of the general public. So I do love that there are so many more career opportunities for people today. And you don't have to leave the industry just because you don't want to, actually, be a full-time, bartender actually behind a bar making drinks. There's a lot of paths and opportunities for today's bartender. I love it.
I do too. I love the opportunity that is there today that wasn't there, like you said, like 10, 15 years ago. It's just wonderful. It's just, this is the time, folks, if you're listening, to really to chase those dreams.
It's cool, right? I mean, even like, I've had bartender, friend, like some of my former bartenders are just doing these amazing things all over the world. And I think it's so cool. Yeah, it's great. It's like when some of my bartenders, it's like, they're like area directors. They work for liquor companies, they're, big time consultants. And I'm so proud of all of them,
Oh my God, totally. It's so fun to watch people's careers today. It really is, to see them maybe even on a TV show, like on Netflix, like to see our friends, and like Drink Masters. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. And I celebrate that. It is so
cool. Same. Really I just love the idea of everybody, people being able to pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
And by doing really cool stuff.
Let's talk about the people now that are working we talked about bar teams a bit, but are you seeing more diversity in the bar itself with the customers and with the folks that are working behind the bar?
Yes. I want to say behind the bar, yes. I don't know to what extent that is, because I do feel like I've seen this happen in numerous markets. With the clientele, definitely. Clientele definitely is much, much more diverse. Not only just like, ethnically, but also I would even say like class-wise and everything, because I do feel like the cocktail, since it's becoming more mainstream, more and more people are getting into it. It used to just be like our bars, back in the day was just like 25 to 35-year-old, like hip people in big cities. Now it's like it's a little bit of everyone, like I said, which I love. I take great pride in the idea of running a bar where the clientele looks like the neighborhood and the staff looks like the neighborhood, right? But I would say, I don't know about the whole staffing thing. Seems a little bit tricky, because I've seen this happen in different cities. I mentioned this before, where I do feel like sometimes, like in San Francisco, I remember the craft bartender scene in the early days was like 60% women, if not more. And then I feel like, but once it becomes a thing and it starts to blow up a bit more, and people start getting articles and write-ups and everything about them, all of a sudden the scene will get like packed with dudes. And then eventually it'll seem like, and then I remember within just a few years, it all of a sudden was the other way around. It was like 60% men and 40% women. Like it like rotated. I don't know. I think it's like, because once it becomes like viable as a career thing, and there's press and media involved, it's like I feel like the dudes like run to like take up the stage. Is that in my mind? Because I talked to Julie Reiner about it, and she said she knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's fun to see like how it ebbs and flows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just part of it. And I'm really glad you said something. I think it's really important that our clients, and that not only like the back of the house, the front of the house should really represent the community that they're serving.
It really should.
I think that's
because it's important.
An inclusive place.
Yeah, it's important for people in the neighborhood to feel like they're welcome in a place that's in their neighborhood.
Right.
So I feel like it can send the wrong message if, especially because, a lot of these bars will sometimes get, reputations of being like gentrifying, right? So I do remember, specifically, I think one of the issues is that a lot of times people just hire their friends. And we don't really think about the fact that sometimes a lot of our friends are very like monochromatic and will just kind of be of the same, ethnicity and sex as us. So people sometimes just, so in their mind, they're like, well, no, I didn't hire, a specific, gender or race. But it's like, yeah, but they was already pre-selected because those are the friends that you generally grew up with or hung out with.
Right.
So I remember specifically when I opened Polite Provisions, it's 11, 12 years ago, I didn't want to hire any friends. I'm like, I'm not hiring any friends. I'm not hiring a lot of people I already knew, because I was living in San Francisco at the time. So I moved back to San Diego to open the bar up. And I was very much went into it with the mentality of, I don't want to be my friend's bosses. I don't like being my friend's boss anymore. Because at Rick House, I was like the boss of all my friends, and I was like, it was tricky. But so specifically, I just hired everybody off of, like Craigslist or ads or whatever. And I remember, the opening staff, of course, was very diverse. And I remember it never even crossed my mind that that's how it looked. And somebody came in, I remember, was like, oh, wow, you did such a good job on like making your staff diverse. I was like, huh? Like, yeah, the staff, it looks like a Benetton billboard. Like, how'd you do that? I'm like, no, I don't even know what you're talking about. Hadn't even occurred to me as though that was like a unique thing in a bar.
Well, it totally was a unique thing in a bar, because for so long, like we would see, just the same, and I'm just going to say it, especially in craft cocktail bars, behind the bar was a lot of white men.
Yeah.
And so to have that shift and to be more inclusive is important, whether you did it deliberately or it just happened, because that's your community.
Yeah, I didn't do it on purpose. And it didn't even occur to me that somebody would see it like that, which, I mean, is fine whether they did or not. But, and I told my friend, I was like, well, no, this is what a staff looks like when you interview a lot of people, when you hire the most qualified ones. Because I have read a lot about, as like I'm sure a lot of us have done, I've read a lot about prejudice in the application process. And I think a lot of us can be prejudiced without really thinking about it or being specifically conscious about it. And it can be kind of troubling. So it's important that we examine our own biases and work to go around those and not let them hinder who we interview and whatnot. Because I remember specifically reading about how, like, somebody will see, if they see like a, an Arabic name or something, they might think like, oh, why don't I? Immediately, some people like, I read this in an article where they're like, subconsciously might think, well, oh, this person probably doesn't drink because so they might be judgy about alcohol. So they might not even interview the person. But it's like, wow, what a really fucked up thing to assume about somebody that you never met. Right?
Totally.
So it's important that people, there's also research about, like, the more like a name seems, the wider they can make a name, the more likely the person is to get called in for an interview. So things like that. I just feel like it's important to interview a lot of people and go into them open-minded.
Yeah.
So you can interview. I mean, another thing I think people do is they create artificial barriers to becoming a bartender. So this is something else I remember I talked to about. I was talking to a friend of mine. They were like, oh, all we have, our bar's all men. Like it's a diverse group of men, but it's almost all men. How do we work past that? And I was like, okay, well, like, talk to me. How do you become a bartender here? Like, well, in order to become a bartender, you have to be a barback, and to be a barback, you have to be able to carry, kegs up like 2 flights of stairs. And I'm like, well, that can be a bit more difficult for like a woman than like a big dude, right? And like, well, I mean, yeah, but I guess we hadn't thought. I'm like, so what you're doing is you create this artificial barrier that is already pre-selecting who can become a bartender. Yeah,
it's so crazy that. And I think that that's not done out of hate or, anything. It's just done with that either unconscious bias or, you just don't even realize
sometimes they don't even think about it.
You're cutting out half of humanity, right?
Yeah. There's like 3 billion people in the world now who you've already, decided can't do that job. And I mean, there are some women out there, of course, that can do it, but I mean, it's not as common. Right. So it just makes things a little more difficult. And then even then, once I feel like even the women that can do that, when they show up, when they look into the bar and they see it's all men anyway, they feel like, oh, well, it might not be for me.
Right.
So, so it's like you created a culture, and then all of a sudden now it gets really broy back there, and it might get a little too, I guess I don't want to say toxic, but it can be a little like, can become a bit more of like a guy's staff. Right. So then what's up happening is like now it makes it even harder for a woman to break through that.
Right.
When to me, it's never made sense to me why in the craft world so often in order to be like, oh, in order to bartend here, you have to be a barback. I've never really seen that in the non-craft world. In the non-craft world, it's always like you have to be a server.
You know what? I think that in order to be in hospitality, everyone should work dish.
Yeah,
I worked dish at a crappy ass restaurant. It's not around anymore, called the Country Star in Las Vegas. And gosh dang it, I hated it. But do I appreciate every single day with all the jobs that I did moving forward after doing dish? And I respect the hell of, out of the folks that are back there doing dish because it's not easy.
No, washing dishes in a busy restaurant humbling is the right word. Also, a lot of times the staff just doesn't respect you anyway, so they'll just like throw dishes in there and splash you, and you're like, "Come on, man! That's some nasty ass water in that tub with all the silverware, and just splash me in the face." Like a lot of times, people don't. They just don't even respect the dishwashers anyway.
Yeah,
which is some weird classes bullshit, right? But
it totally is.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of times people see it's like, "Oh, that's where you start," so they need to get hazed, and it's like, or you could just be like, behave yourself like a civilized human being. That's the other option. But that's a little too much to ask for some people, right? However, I will say that I'm really glad I did that because you as well, because I feel like people like me or you could throw us anywhere in a restaurant or bar and we'll thrive.
Yep, and you just do it.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to do prep?
You've been through it already.
Yeah. You want me to do prep kitchen? Yeah, I could put vegetables in little baggies.
Yeah, no problem.
You want me to juice? I could juice. I can make syrups. I could run a deep fryer. What do you need from me? I used to bartend this one place in Sacramento years ago. Years ago now. I actually made good money here. It was like a little, a tiny little bar that had that had good pizza, And, during the week on the slower nights, they'd send the pizza guy home. So I would be cooking pizzas and I'd be making pizzas and bartending at the same time. And I would get my ass kicked. But I swear I got such good tips because people just saw me running.
Yeah, you're hustling.
Yeah, and it was designed well that you could kind of do both because, like, from my well where I was making cocktails, like the oven to put the pizzas in was only like probably 20 feet away. So I could just say, knock out some drinks real quick, run over there, throw some toppings on pizza, throw them in there. And like, the only thing is like, after you burn a few slices, you get really good at the timing. So, my ADHD brain just thrived on it.
Oh my gosh. Do you believe that you just said ADHD? I too have ADHD.
Yeah. And I wasn't at all shocked when I discovered that. When I was diagnosed, I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was diagnosed when I lived in Vegas. This is over 20 years ago. And then I'm like, I don't know that I don't think I still have this. And then like 20 years later, I got tested again. And of course, it doesn't just go away like the chicken pox or something.
No.
Do you think that it serves you?
Oh,
if
yeah.
You're comfortable talking about it. If you're comfortable talking about it.
Oh, yes, I definitely am.
This. Do you think it serves you?
I would not trade it for anything in the world. I would never. If someone was like, "Hey, here you can take this blue pill and it'll cure you forever," I'm like, "Nope, no thanks, pal. Don't need it. Don't want it." I think, to be fair though, I think it's because now I've learned how to use it as like a weapon.
Yeah. As
an advantage. I do wish, however, that I had been taught how to manage it when I was younger.
Oh my God.
Because I do feel like every year in elementary school or middle school and elementary school, I would I would test into the to like the gifted programs. And then within 6 weeks, I would always get kicked out and I'd just be back with all the regular kids. And then the next year, the same thing would happen. And then every year I'd get kicked back out. And it was just like, it was one of those things because I didn't know how to manage it. My whole idea, the reason why I wanted to finish my work wasn't to be a good student. I was like, I need to finish up my work so I can bug everybody else. And like distract everyone, right? Just be a little shit,
Yeah. I just couldn't concentrate on my work.
I never got to go on field trips because I was always getting too much trouble. I was always talking, disruptive. So I do wish that I had that I had been taught how to manage it when I was younger. Now I'm like an expert at it, but I do wish I had learned some of these like tactics and strategies when I was younger. But hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I feel you on every bit of that, brother. But I do think that it can be a bit of a superpower. Like I can compartmentalize like nobody's business. I can do that. I can push things aside and be focused for a little bit on something when I need to be.
Oh, and I've even thought about it too in regards to the context of like when I feel like bartending. I still bartend a couple nights a week, which is great, and I have so much fun doing it. And I do feel like, to me, bartending is not even work. It's like not even real work. Like I have so much fun back there, and it's exactly what I feel like my brain needs. That it's almost like it's almost like a break for me.
Well, yeah, because it's different every second.
Yeah, it is. And it's just you're constantly entertained. And it's like there's people in front of you to talk to. And then you get to engage with them. And then if they bore you, just go to the next people. And then, the whole time you're talking to them, also your hands are moving and building drinks and wiping things and polishing glasses, that you're like your brain. It's exactly what my brain needs.
Yes.
And someone was asking me like, oh, hey, do you feel like, is it too much work to have a full day and then hop back there and, bartend? And I was like, well, not really. I'm like, in a way, it's almost like therapeutic for me because it gives me a chance to just kind of just talk to people.
Yeah.
Instead of staring at a screen.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, I'm with you. My husband and I, we own 2 breweries out here in our little hometown. And one of them has a bar in it, and it's just small, little bar. But I love when I can, go there and do anything, whether it's mixing up a few drinks. Last night I was planting, putting the planters up, like anything that I can do. I want to be part of it because it's different than my day-to-day grind.
Yeah. Right. Like the only thing is if I'm doing if I'm working at the bar all day and then I have to bartend, then it can be exhausting. I'm like, this is too much. But if I'm doing all my, my podcast stuff during the day or some consulting, and then I go to the bar, then it's like, it doesn't even feel like real work. It's almost like a break.
Yeah, totally. So can you tell our listeners, what are you up to today? What does your day-to-day look like?
See, this is something else. When I did get diagnosed with ADHD, the therapist, the psychologist was like, "Wow, like you seem." I told her that no 2 days are alike. They're always different. I told her that I farmed out all the tedious work that I don't like to do. I've already farmed out to other people, and that so I can focus on the stuff I really like to do. And she was like, "Wow, I marvel at the world that you have created around you that maximizes all the benefits of ADHD and minimizes all the pitfalls." And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't that what you're supposed to do?" So a day to day for me is I'm trying to think about my last couple of days. Well, sometimes I travel for work, so sometimes I'm doing events in other cities. Sometimes I'm doing educations for people, whether it's live or on the internet. So I'll host a podcast, which is just past 400 episodes recently. So I do that once a week. I think I don't think I've missed a week in maybe like 5 or 6 years.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
So I do that.
About that too. Yeah, that's so great.
And I do a lot of consulting. I train bartenders. Sometimes I talk to like attorneys and, talk about liquor licenses and stuff. Sometimes I deal with contractors, who are building out bars or for projects I'm working on. So it's a lot of fun. It allows me to stay very engaged, and honestly, it allows me to work a lot without me ever getting bored.
That's important, right?
I love it.
Yeah, to have that freedom, to have that creativity, to be unique in the world.
And I love it. It's just so much fun. Honestly, as for me, I have a lot of fun doing this stuff. I honestly, I feel very fortunate the fact that like what I do for work, I'd probably do for free. And the fact that I've convinced other people to pay me for it is insane.
That's wonderful. Can you talk about your podcast? Let's talk about Bartender at Large. Talk about, tell our listeners how it came to be. Mm-hmm. What do you talk about? Who are some of your favorite guests?
Oh, wow. Oh, shoot. That's a lot to talk about there. Okay, I guess what I would say is the idea, I guess, rather like the catalyst for the podcast came from a documentary I worked on called Bartender at Large. So I directed a documentary years ago, and I realized I didn't have a marketing budget to promote it. So I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'll just do a podcast, and on the podcast, we'll promote the documentary, and hopefully it'll gain some steam, and it'll kind of just like feed. It'll feed the hype for the documentary. So, but eventually, it did work. My plan worked, but eventually the podcast just ended up taking on a life of its own, and started doing attaining a level of success. And I was like, what, I'm gonna keep this podcast going. So in the podcast, this was pre-pandemic, so we were doing all of our episodes in person. So I traveled, all over China,
wow,
Tokyo, Europe, Mexico. I mean, you name it. We were traveling all over the world doing, recording episodes of the podcast, and it was going really well. And and then of course the pandemic happened. So then kind of shifted to, Zoom became a more, much easier medium to use for recording the podcast. But still, it's like, it still takes me around the world. I have a good time doing it. And, it's weird. It's funny, but like, my degree in journalism is like, essentially, this is my outlet for that. So I take a lot of pride in my interviews and trying to become a better interviewer. And the irony is from all this is I do feel like I've gotten way better at public speaking from this because I could just talk. I mean, I've always had a big mouth. I established that earlier, but it's allowed me to just become so much better at speaking off the cuff. It's made me a better listener, so it's made me a better conversationalist. I feel like when I'm, just out in my everyday life, you can put me on stage now and just be like, Erick, talk for 30 minutes or talk for 6 minutes, and I'll just do that. It doesn't really matter. In my mind, I'll kind of just create an outline in my brain as I'm speaking and just kind of work my way through it. So I do feel like it's helped in a lot of ways. I do feel like it's made me a better person, and it's allowed me to share and shed light on things that I feel like didn't always get addressed in the industry. And now a lot of these things are kind of commonplace now. But, I feel like a lot of times when we first started talking about this stuff, the industry was a little more inhibited about speaking out. We've had episodes on really heavy topics, on somebody getting sober, hitting rock bottom. We've had episodes on burnout. We've had episodes on, the history of the, lesbian bar. We've had all kinds of topics that I all pertain to the industry, while still talking about things like, the history of bourbon or, getting to know Isla Scotch. So it's just a properly, I feel like, represents the industry as a whole. And I would say that if I can remember one episode that really changed things for me, there was an episode that we did years ago that was on burnout. And I do remember specifically that episode being one that really changed things for me in regards to what the podcast could be. Because I remember that the podcast had been going on for maybe about a year or so. And in those early days, it was just kind of like, we talked about, kind of more, I guess, traditional cocktail stuff. And when we actually I remember specifically we were sitting down, it was me and I had a couple of guests. We used to do more of a roundtable format back then. It wasn't one-on-one. So we had a roundtable format. And someone was just asking me, like, hey, Eric, they were like, hey, I don't know. It's going to be hard. I really want to talk about cocktails today. I'm just burnt out. And I was like, you want to talk about burnout? And they were like, well, can we? I was like, yeah, why not? I mean, it's my show. And they're like, cool. So we talked about it. It got really deep. And that was one of the first episodes where people were like, whoa, dang, that episode really resonated with me. We got like a lot of fan mail on that episode. And I think this was in 2016. I was like, okay, cool. So like now I felt like our audience had told us that, like, started to request heavier topics. So we started talking about everything. And I remember there was one specific episode where we interviewed Nectali Mendoza, big time, restaurateur out in Vegas. And he was, he came on, he talked about how he got sober and how he, had hit rock bottom and was like, his family was worried about him because he was into all kinds of stuff. And he was, he had always been a little bit overweight, but then he got really big because he wasn't taking care of himself. And he talked about how, he lost like 130 pounds, got sober and all that stuff. And he did all for his family. I remember that was one of the first episodes where people were sending us, messages telling me that they cried the whole episode. Like I listened to that episode and I was in tears.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Because at the time I was like, I didn't really know that the podcast could even do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like that's, I realized then then we had a major responsibility for our clientele, not clientele, like we're a restaurant. No, I mean, for our listeners, that it was important for us to give them an outlet and let them know that they're not alone in this.
Right.
Because a lot of times people might think like, oh man, I'm feeling burnout or I'm depressed because I'm working too much. And everyone else, I'm sure no one else is feeling this except me. But it's like, no, it's okay that you're not alone. And this is totally normal. It's a totally normal thing. And you can go easier on yourself and forgive yourself because you're just a human. We're all just humans. And it's important. I mean, it feels silly to have to say that, but I think sometimes we need to be reminded, especially as bartenders, because when we're clocked in and we're behind the bar, sometimes we give so much of ourselves that we forget to take care of ourselves. So I do like to think that we did help play a part in like bringing some of these conversations and uncomfortable conversations to the forefront.
Well, I think that you did. And I want to thank you for that, because I do think that, we talk about a little bit about how our culture in beverage can be toxic. And a lot of it is self-inflicting toxicity. And one of those is definitely burnout, because we're part of this hustle culture where you have to just go hard. And the FOMO is real. Oh my God, with all the parties that are going on or whatever it might be, like a Tales of the Cocktail. I must go to that and go so hard every single day, until I'm going to pass out, like whatever it might be, where you do have to be conscious and be like, hey, I am only human. I need to have some hobbies outside of this industry and really take care of myself, or I'm not going to live long.
Also, if you're not taking care of yourself, or if you're not, I guess, tending to your hobbies and your life outside of this, what ends up happening is you end up becoming very two-dimensional, and you're not that interesting anymore.
Right.
So I tell my staff, it's important that guys, if you have other hobbies, like, make sure you make time for them, whether it's like photography or whatever, because it's important that when a guest sits in front of you and wants to have a conversation, that you can have an actual conversation. You don't just keep bringing it back to cocktails. What
are your hobbies, Eric?
Right now, it's like, I have to admit, I might not be following my own advice all that much right now, just because, I'm still in the early stages of a new bar. It's, only been open for about 6 months, and we're getting a back patio bar opened up this week. last week and kind of still getting some things done. So, but my hobbies, I would say I read a lot. I try to make time for it. And I walk 6 miles every morning with my dogs. Yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those people who I started doing that during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started losing a lot of weight. So I probably lost since the beginning of the pandemic, I probably lost 40 or 50 pounds.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's
it was just honestly and it's not even that much. I think I only lose a pound a month.
Wow.
It's not even that much, but it's just but I feel like as I get older, I realize that incremental sustained goals is a really good place to be.
Yeah.
So I started doing that because I started getting insomnia during it. I mean, I always kind of suffered with insomnia from time to time, but during the pandemic, my insomnia got really bad and I couldn't sleep at all. So I'm a big believer in tire the body to tire the body to ease the mind. Mm-hmm. So I just came up with this idea. I'm like, I'm going to wake up early every day and I'm just going to walk 6 miles every morning.
And your dogs can handle 6 miles?
Oh, it's nothing for them.
Out, man.
They don't even care. Honestly, I take Charlie off the leash when we get home and he just starts running around. He gets a zoomies. He's like, oh, cool. What's next? You going to throw the ball for me? Come on, bud. Let's do it. What do you have? What do we do next? To be fair, on Saturdays, we only do 4. Mm-hmm. And then on Sundays, we take the day off.
Wow.
So generally that's the way we do it. And honestly, it's changed my life. It's changed my life. All these issues I had over the course of, I don't know, the last 10 years or whatever, they've all just disappeared. I used to get bad acid reflux. That's gone. Used to have insomnia. That's gone. I used to have lower back pain. That's gone. I used to have ankle pain and knee pain. All that's gone. Mm. So, and it didn't really occur to me until it was I went to the allergist and she's like, all right, let's just do a little checklist of all the issues you've ever had in the last, so she started seeing us 10 years ago. And she's like, it was to the point where even my doctor was like, hey, I forgot what blood pressure medication we put you on because your numbers are really low. Your numbers have gotten low, but I forgot what we put you on because it looks like I didn't write it down. Oh, you didn't put me on anything. He's like, wait, what? How'd your blood pressure drop? And I was like, well, you told me to lose 15 pounds and start exercising, so I did. Mm. He's like, oh, okay. Well, no one else ever really listens to me, so I'm glad you did. Yeah.
That's incredible. What's next for you, Erick?
For me, I don't really know. I mean, I'm always working on some stuff. I'm always working on stuff. So that's a good thing. Who knows? Maybe when I'm able to talk about some of this stuff, you'll be the first to know.
I would love that. I would love to have you back on the show. I think that would be marvelous. I want to just take a minute to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule for being on.
Letting you ramble?
No, not rambling at all. I think that we're definitely learning a lot of great things from your wisdom, Erick. It's wonderful. And I want to.
Shucks.
Oh, no, for real. And I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace, brother. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Oh, thank you so much one more time just for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!